We are Recyclops. My name is Ryan Smith, and my VP is Richard Flores. I grew up recycling. I came to BYU as a freshman and recycled. But when I moved into off-campus housing, this opportunity disappeared. I was confused why this was the case, and I wanted to solve this pain. I did some initial research by going to numerous local apartment complexes to see if they offered recycling. Next, I looked at the BYU Housing Guide and was disappointed that it didn't contain any recycling statistics. The more apartments I went to and called, the more I was convinced that this was a problem. At this point, I was convinced that apartments weren't recycling, but I wasn't convinced that other tenants really cared. I started scouring the internet for surveys and stumbled upon a 500-person random sample survey conducted by the BYU Eco-Response Club. This survey showed that 85% of students found recycling either to be important or very important, 89% of students recycled in their hometowns, and 80% of students were willing to pay for recycling. Because of my limited knowledge of the recycling space, I sought to connect with an expert in the industry, so I reached out to Bill Rudy, the manager of BYU's Recycle Center. Bill told me that other students had also sought to solve this problem over the years. He walked me through their businesses, all of which had failed, and I realized that all had approached recycling in a similar manner, a door-to-door collection approach. By this time, I learned that recycling wasn't happening at apartments because they had monetary and space constraints. I set out to find an inexpensive recycling option that didn't take up valuable parking, but wasn't a door-to-door approach. I got the idea of building a small shred-like structure in which I could hang bulk bags. I made the assumption that I would be able to find a space at apartment complexes to put this type of structure without having to sacrifice parking. I asked my brother-in-law to do a professional sketch of the shed design, which I could use to go out and start making sales. I then designed a pricing structure where I would charge apartments $2.90 per tenant per month, which would then be passed directly to the student as part of their utilities. I believed that tenants wouldn't notice such a small increase in their already variable utilities. I then planned on reimbursing the apartment complex 20 to 30% of this fee. This way, the complex could earn slightly more revenue without having to officially change the fixed cost of rent. The first complex I approached was Campus Plaza. I met with the owner and quickly learned that most of my assumptions were dead wrong. As I started my pitch, it was clear that the owner cared nothing about the stats I had obtained from the BYU Eco-Response Club, so I did a fast pivot and abandoned my planned pitch. I told him what I was doing and that I wanted Campus Plaza to get involved. The owner told me that they were not interested in charging the students any more money for anything. I was shocked. The owner cared more about his tenant than he did about making a few extra bucks. I was confused because I was sure I had devised the perfect payment solution. I also realized that they weren't interested in working with a billing system that operated on a per-head basis. I walked away a little discouraged and without a signed contract, but with a lot to think about. Soon thereafter, I learned BYU was hosting a landlord conference, and I decided that I should attend. I wasn't technically invited, but I showed up and networked during lunch, making some key contacts. And then at the end of the event, I asked the event coordinator for 5 minutes to talk to everyone about recycling, and was surprised when they actually let me do it. I used some of the newly learned lessons at this event, but for the most part, I was resistant to abandon any of my brilliant ideas. I had several apartment complexes expressed interest, so I felt like I was on the right track, but after weeks of following up with landlords, all of my leads went dry. The one thing that did come from this event was that BYU changed their housing guide to show whether or not a complex recycles. I could tell I was doing something wrong, so I fell out of love with my ideas and began to pivot. My first major pivot was to change the pricing structure. I decided that $300 per month per shed was a simple and reasonable price point. At this moment, I was in constant communication with the Elms and Alpine Village. Both of these deals felt promising, but about a month later, no progress had been made, and I gave up on Recyclops altogether. I decided that my brilliant idea was a flop. The next day, I got a call from the Elms saying that they were on board. I immediately called Alpine Village and told them that the Elms had signed up, and Alpine Village decided that they would give it a go as well. The management of these complexes truly valued the idea of being green, and for them, it was worth the cost. At this point, I essentially thought that I had made it, and that all pivoting was over with. As soon as these contracts were signed, I bought a truck and partnered with Kong Sheds, a local shed manufacturer. With money now coming in, I took a look at my costs. In my business model, there were 2 basic fixed costs, the truck and the sheds, and 2 basic variable costs, labor and gas. Until now, I hadn't reached out to Provo City for any help because I had been told that they were not very sympathetic to this cause. However, I decided that I should meet with Mayor Curtis to at least let him know what I was doing. Once again, I learned that one of my assumptions was way off. The day of my meeting with the mayor, Provo City Council reached out to me and told me they were putting together a brochure listing recycling options for apartment complexes. They asked me all about Recyclops and told me that they wanted Recyclops to be a part of the brochure, which would be going out to all apartment complexes in Provo in several months. I was pumped at these new developments. However, I soon realized that my price point was about double that of my competition, who would also be in the same brochure. In the next few months, I had no luck signing any new contracts, and Alpine Village got a new manager who wasn't as willing to spend money for recycling. I was about to lose my contract there, and Provo City's brochure was due to come out soon, so I started reaching out to apartment complexes in order to explore different pricing options. In doing so, I learned that the optimal price was $150 per shed per month. This did the trick and saved my contract with Alpine Village. I began reaching out to more complexes, and soon signing contracts wasn't as difficult. My new problem was being able to afford growth rather than being able to make sales. By being reliable and offering additional services such as free extra pickups during busy times like tenant checkouts and check-ins, we have established strong and lasting relationships with apartment owners and managers. The new price point has stuck, and we've continued to grow, adding a new shed each month, a growth rate that we found to be affordable. With $1,900 in recurring monthly revenue, we have a total of 10 sheds at 6 apartments servicing nearly 3,000 students and recycling over 2 tons per month. Within the first year of use, we will be able to pay off each new shed. This means that every subsequent year, we make approximately $1,300 profit per shed after labor, transportation, and depreciation costs are taken out. This gives each shed an overall value of $26,000 over their 20-year lifespan. According to Unified Waste Systems, retention rates in the commercial waste management industry are approximately 95%, and we expect similar retention rates at Recyclops. We plan to continue growing in Utah, which is a $2 million market, and then to expand to surrounding states. We have already received tenant requests from Arizona, and when speaking to a government official in Fort Collins, Colorado, we were told this is the first big innovation in this space for years, and that they would be interested in giving this a trial run in Fort Collins. Overall, there are currently 35 million Americans living in apartment complexes, and this number is only expected to grow. With an average of $150 per 200 tenants, this means that our total market size is approximately $315 million. About 52% or 18 million of these tenants have no access to recycling. So far, we have had a sales conversion rate of approximately 60%. At this rate, we could capture 31% of the total market, or 11 million people. This would make our annual income around $98.3 million. Our biggest obstacle to growth has been capital requirements to open new accounts due to the upfront cost of buying new sheds. However, this week we have a meeting with Kong Sheds in order to discuss having them finance our sheds, which will remove many of our financial constraints and enable us to grow exponentially. We are also meeting with Zions Bank to discuss an SBA loan. Using the national average recycling rate of 30%, 56,000 tons of recyclables from apartments in Utah are thrown into landfills each year. That's enough to cover the earth in 2 inches of trash. We are Recyclops, and we have an eye single to solving this problem.